With the new changes in the federal budget that came on in June 2024, specifically regarding the increase in inclusion rate on capital gains, there has been more interest among physicians and other healthcare professionals to learn more about ways to minimize these types of tax increases. Also, at the same time, the healthcare community in Canada has been suffering from a great deal of burnout among its clinicians. And so it's not surprising that people are looking more into pension plans as a way to secure their future, their financial future. And so there has been more interest from people to look at financial plans and pension plans. And unfortunately or fortunately, there has been also more advertisement and marketing to physicians about these such plans. Unfortunately, many of us do not understand these plans and do not understand the intricacies and the nuances of these plans. It is important that physicians who are going to sign up to these plans understand the legal structure and the actuarial structure of these plans to make a clear, informed decision. So this podcast is just about that. And it is about one particular type of pension plans now marketed to physicians. And this pension plan is called the Specified Multi-Employer Pension Plan. And we will dive deep into this topic today.
How's my financial health, Doc? Welcome to the Financial Literacy Podcast for Healthcare Professionals, where financial security and wealth topics are not a taboo.
Welcome to the How is My Financial Health Doc podcast, and I am your host, Tran. Welcome back to the show. I have not been with you guys for a long time because I guess we got busy and life got busy, but we're back. And we're back today talking about pension plans, but one specific type of pension plan called Specified Multi-Employer Pension Plan. But we will also review the different types of pension plans that exist in Canada, so that we can at least have a lay of the land, sort of understand the context, and then go straight into the SMEPP, which is a Specified Multi-Employer Pension Plan. To do that, I have with us our guest again, Mr. Jean-Pierre Laporte. Jean-Pierre, welcome to the show.
Great to be back.
It's great to have you back. Jean-Pierre and I are colleagues or friends, but we also work together. We are the co-founders of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan. I am the president. JP, you are the treasurer. But beyond being treasurer, JP is the brains behind all this because he is a pension lawyer and I am just a physician. So we're going to be talking about pension plans. So I'm going to be relying on his expertise and his knowledge. JP, remind us, what do you do and how long you've been doing this?
So I'm the CEO of a pension consulting firm called Integris, and I've been a pension lawyer since 2001. So this is my 23rd year of being called to the bar in Ontario.
Okay, so that's a lot of experiences and a lot of what I call clinical knowledge in the pension world. So let's start the show. You know what? Physicians have been asking for a pension plan for a long, long time. I think ever since the profession existed in Canada. And myself, I've been looking for a pension plan for a long, long time and did one with Integris, with yourself. And then we created the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan. And here we are, end of 2024. And there are a few pension plans actually now targeting and aiming physicians and inviting them to join. And there seems to be a lot of information, but also inaccuracies in the market. And But to be honest, you know what? We are physicians. We deal with medicine. We deal with people. We don't deal with pension plans and the law. And so a lot of these become sort of confusing. It all messed up into one little ball of spaghetti, and we don't know how to untangle it. So let's try to untangle it a little bit. Before we do that, let's try to understand the different types of pension plans that exist in the market, or at least in the Canadian environment. What are the different types of pension plan that currently do exist?
If you think of, I don't know if it's a decision tree or trying to group things, concepts together, at the very top, you have the concept of a registered pension plan. So that's a plan that's registered with the government that allows you to put money aside for your retirement, and contributions put in there are deductible to the person who put it in. And the money grows tax sheltered while it's within the registered pension plan. So that's the top category. Then you have what I call the retail world and the group world. So the retail world, you have either an individual pension plan or a personal pension plan. That's really when your medical professional corporation only employs you as the doctor, as a physician. It's the retail world. It's not a group. So you would either be in an IPP or in a PPP. And then how those are structured, there are some extra rules. So there's some variations on the theme. In the group world, you have single employer pension plan. So imagine if you worked for General Motors or Ford or some medical clinic. That's the employer. There's a single employer, and it sponsors a plan for a bunch of employees. Or you could be in a multi-employer setting where there are multiple employers all feeding into a single pension plan, one big pool. So that's sort of the lay of the land. Now, that's sort of the description, but each type of pension plan could either be providing what we call a defined benefit or a defined contribution pension. So you have that variability. Now, sometimes, and this is the case with the PPP on the retail side, it can be a combination of the two. Now, what do I mean by that? It just means that the pension that you're going to collect in retirement could either be fixed by a formula, so you know exactly how much you're going to collect each month, like let's say $10,000 a month or $20,000 a month or whatever. That's a defined benefit pension. Or it's defined contribution in nature. So you don't know what you're going to collect because it depends on how much money you put in every year. It depends on how the markets did. It depends on the expenses, how expensive it was to manage that money. So there's a whole bunch of factors which give you uncertainty as to what you'll be able to retire on. So the multi-employer pension plan could be defined benefit, or it could be defined contribution. Sometimes, in the case of universities, it's a hybrid of the two. A single employer plan could be defined benefit in nature or defined contribution in nature. Sometimes it's a combination. So there's a lot of different variability. That's why it gets so complicated so quickly, because unless you know exactly what you're facing, what you're dealing with, you may not get a full understanding of the applicable laws that kind of regulate this type of solution. And today's topic is one of the many, many permutations that we talked about. It's the specified multi-employer pension plan. So that's a special beast unto itself, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today.
Thank you for that. Now, I am more confused than when we started. Thank you for that. So here's how I'm going to try to do this. So a multi-employer pension plan is different employers contributing to one plan. What are some examples that exist in the Canadian environment right now that is a multi-employer pension plan?
There are a number of organizations, especially in the union space. There are a lot of unions that have created multi-employer pension plans because the unionized workers may belong to all kinds of trade corporations, like the electricians, the plumbers, the fitters, the woodworkers. And sometimes they move from one to the other because of different projects they work on, but they're always part of the same union. So this is a perfect example of where you have a multi-employer structure, where you have a whole bunch of employers that employ these unionized workers. They'll make contributions to the central pool, but when the project ends and that unionized worker is either terminated or starts working for a different employer, they can continue to make contributions to their pension plan. So it's a way of piecing together dollars from different jobs into one single continuous pool, so that
Got it.
when you retire, you get one single pension check. You don't fragment all your money all over the place. So that's one example. Within the multi-employer world, you have what are called jointly sponsored pension plans. So those are usually large public sector plans where the province is the employer and the employees are civil servants. The Healthcare of Ontario pension plan, which a lot of nurses participate in, is a multi-employer plan in that sense, because it has a whole bunch of participating employers. Hospitals, for example, that are employing these nurses, each hospital contributes to the central pool.
And I'm assuming here that each hospital is considered an employer. That's why it's called a multi-employer.
That's right. Each hospital is an employer. It's employing a bunch of nurses. Those are the employees, and they are all part of this one big pool called the Healthcare of Ontario Pension Plan. It used to be called the Hospitals of Ontario Pension Plan, and then it's changed its name to Healthcare of Ontario Pension Plan, but it's one big pool. The College of Applied Arts and Technology Pension Plan is another multi-employer pension plan, because each college professor is an employee of that college. But instead of creating a whole bunch of single employer plans, the college sector decided to pool their resources together and create a multi-employer pension plan.
So you did say one word, joint public. Is that what you
Jointly
used?
sponsored.
Jointly sponsored. What does that mean? It means the nurse will contribute an amount and the public will contribute another amount that matches. Is that correct?
It depends, but really it's that the risks of the funding, meaning making sure there's enough money in the pool to sustain the promised pensions, that risk is borne equally between the members and their employers. So, because in a single employer pension plan, like General Motors or Ford, or all the risk, all the funding risk, making sure there's enough money in the plan to pay the promised pension falls on the employer. In a jointly sponsored context, the members also bear some of the risks. They may be asked to contribute more money if the assets in that central pool just aren't generating the returns that we were hoping for. So it's more of a joint share risking with a jointly sponsored.
In the case of the multi-employer pension plan that you mentioned, the different unions would have it, but it's not joint. How does that work? Who bears the responsibility and the liability?
Well, again, it will depend on whether or not it offers a defined benefit pension or a defined contribution pension. So if it's a defined contribution pension, there is no funding risk because there's no promised benefit. Your account is accumulating, and whatever you've got in your account when you retire, that's what you have to live off. So if you've done really well, then that's great. You're going to have a lot of money. If the market's tanked just before you retired and your account balance is depressed, then I guess, that's how the cookie crumbles, and you end up with a lot less money for your retirement. So there's no employer responsibility to kick in more money. If it's defined benefit, what happens is there's a special mechanism, a special rule I'm only going to talk about Ontario. So under the Ontario Pension Benefits Act, if there's not enough money inside the pension plan, the administrator of the pension plan has the legal power to reduce the promised benefits. So let's say the multi-employer plan promised you $100,000 a year pension, and every year your medical corporation made contributions to the pool. But unfortunately, some geopolitical event occurred just before you retired, and the value of the pension fund shrank from, let's say, it had $20 million in it. Now it's down to $10 million. The problem is for you to enjoy a $100,000 a year pension, the plan has to have $20 million in it. So what the administrators of the multi-employer plan have the right to do is to say, well, we won't pay you $100,000 a year. We'll pay you $50,000 a year because there's only enough money to pay you half. We lost half the money because of the geopolitical event. It's still defined benefit. You're still getting a fixed amount each month, but it's not what you were hoping for. So this is an adjustment downwards to your pension, and it's permitted by law. It's baked into the Pension Benefits Act, and it's a mechanism that deals with this shortfall.
So what I'm hearing is in the multi-employer pension plan that does not have a joint responsibility, then there is no liability from a third party, either a government or other institutions, to put these special payments to match up, to top up the plan. So in a non-joint plan, that's the consequence. In a joint plan, then someone makes up for the difference.
That's right. The burden is shared.
Okay. So what are some of the examples of a joint plan, joint multi-employer plan?
Well, these would not be available to physicians.
So now let's dive into one specific multi-employer pension plan that we're going to talk about today. And there are some characteristics to them. And that's why we kind of did a lay of the land to understand the different options. So we are talking about specified multi-employer pension plan. So what does that mean, and what does specified mean?
Yeah. So when the pension promised to the physician under a specified multi-pension plan is a defined benefit pension, you would expect that the way to fund that promise would be defined benefit in nature, actuarially driven. But the law, and this is the Income Tax Act, allows for what are called specified multi-employer plans. What those are is that, yes, the doctors promised a defined benefit pension, but the funding mechanism, the participating employers are using the defined contribution limits, which is 18% of salary, up to a limit called the money purchase limit. If you were trying to fund a classic defined benefit pension, you would be exceeding the 18% requirement, because as you get older, you need more and more money to make sure there's enough there to sustain the promised benefit. But under a specified multi-employer plan, the responsibility of the employer is capped at the defined contribution lower limit, which I guess is good for the employer, but not so good for the pensioner, because the monies that should have been added under normal funding rules are not being added because you're not allowed to contribute more than the DC limit. So I'll give you a quick example. If you take I'm going to take a 55-year-old doctor that is paid a salary of $180,000. Under a true defined benefit plan, the contribution required would be $45,069 this year. Under the SMEPP rules, the most that the company could contribute would be $32,490. So there's a $13,500 amount that should in theory been contributed in order to make sure that that pension can be sustained, but that cannot go into the pension fund because it's capped at a lower level. Instead of 18% of salary going in, with a true defined benefit plan, it would be 24.97%, almost 25% of salary. So I don't know if you can picture that, but it just means that we've got less money going in than is required to ensure that the plan promise can be delivered.
That also means that the corporation cannot contribute that extra $13,000 that we talked about in this example.
Correct.
And because it does not allow to contribute that extra 13,000, the MPC, the corporation, cannot take advantage of $13,000 tax write-off as well.
Yeah, it's giving up 13 grand of extra deductions because it's capped by the money purchase limit.
Right. So there's money left on the table.
Well, it's not just that. It's also that, let's say we do have a catastrophic event, like some geopolitical event, and the pension fund suffers as a result. With a classic defined benefit structure, you can do top-up special payments, which are also tax deductible. So it's not 25%, it could be 50%, it could be 100% of your salary being contributed to the pension plan under those rules. You can't do that with a specified multi-employer plan because you're capped at that 18%.
Let me understand this and put it into words that people can understand. It means that, let's just say there's a geopolitical event and the market took a 30% dive. Within a true defined benefit plan, not a SMEPP, but a true defined benefit plan, the actuaries can recalculate and say, hey, Vu, your plan has a shortfall of 30%, let's say, in this example. Therefore, your corporation can, if wanted, and if the funds are available, to meet that top up. And let's call that top up 10,000, okay, as an example. So your corporation can put a $10,000 top up contribution to my plan. So therefore, my corporation takes a tax deduction of $10,000 additional.
Yeah, that's right.
But in a SMEPP, because that's not allowed by law, it's not structurally written legally in the plan text, there is no special payment. So even though I lost 30% because it's following the money purchase limit of a DC plan, not a true defined benefit plan, my corporation will not be able to put that extra $10,000, take that extra $10,000 tax write-off. In addition to that, I will not be able to contribute 10,000 to invest and compound in the market. Am I correct in understanding this way?
That's exactly how it works. So it's good for the employer in the sense that they're not asked to put more money in, but it's not so good for the plan member, for the doctor, because it means that their pension fund is starved of resources that it really needs in order to make sure that the pension plan can deliver on the promise. But you'll say to me, well, that's okay, because you can reduce the promised benefit. Remember, that's what you said earlier, JP. You said, if there's not enough money in the pool, then instead of paying you 100 grand promise, I'll pay you $50,000 promise. So the system comes back into equilibrium because everything is now scaled down to accommodate the new reality, which is we've lost all this money.
Right, but in my mind, it doesn't provide me much safety. I started the plan when I'm 45. I'm contributing this for the next 20 years because I'm planning to retire at age 65. And you told me at the outset when I started the plan that I would be paid $10,000 a month, which is $120,000 a year. And then 20 years later, some geopolitical event happens and I lost 30%, 50%, whatever it is. And now you're saying, well, yeah, Vu, I know we promised you this 20 years ago, but given the current state of affairs, we can only give you $5,000 a month. It comes back to equilibrium, but it doesn't provide me much confidence, does it?
No, but luckily, because this is a multi-employer plan, if your colleagues die sooner than they ought to and leave all their money in the fund, because it becomes a gain to the plan, so it's called an actuarial gain to the plan, that extra money that your colleagues left behind can be used to make sure that you won't have such a big reduction in your promised benefit. So there's another mechanism that helps protect your $10,000 benefit. It's using your colleagues' money. Instead of it going to their children, it stays in the pool, so some of it can be used to fund your pension.
So I get it. So what you're saying is, I'm banking my financial safety on other people dying earlier.
Yeah, you're taking money from your colleagues' children and keeping it in the pool so that you can take advantage of it when you take your retirement.
Okay, got it. So now we've talked about a few downsides of the SMEP. Are there other downsides that we haven't talked about?
Well, because the SMEP is registered with the provincial pension authorities, the contributions that your medical corporation undertakes are mandatory. If the doctor's business takes you get sick, you don't bill as many hours, the corporation is earning less OHIP income, you're still on the hook for contributing to the pension plan. So that may create some funding pressures. The other one is because it's regulated by the provincial pension commission, the money is locked in. So if you wanted to get out of this, unfortunately, that money has to go into a locked-in retirement account typically, or a life income fund. So you won't be able to access all that money in an emergency, right? There are certain rules that you may be able to access some or all of it, but it's kind of rare. Like, let's say you leave the country and you become a non-resident for 2 years in a row, then you might be able to unlock everything and have access to it. Or if you're going to die within 2 years and you have a doctor's certificate that says my life expectancy is really bad, then you may be able to access your money ahead of schedule. But short of these, and there's a few more, but short of these really rare instances, a lot of your money is tied up, is locked in, and cannot be accessed right away. It can only be accessed in the form of a regular pension or a regular decumulation option. So that for some people who like to have 100% control over all their money, the locking in is an issue as well. And there's a tax problem as well. If you collapse your pension plan, or at least your participation, your medical corporation stops participating, and you say, I want to pull my money out, I want to transfer it out of the collective specified multi-employer pension plan. If the value, what we call the commuted value of your plan exceeds a certain percentage, only a fraction of your money will be able to transfer into the life income fund or the LIRA on a tax deferred basis. Anything above that limit is going to be a cash payment, and that's taxable in your hands as well. There could be, I'm not saying there will always be, but there could be an extra tax problem should you try to get away from that solution.
Okay, so what you're telling me are a few things. I'm going to unpack that a little bit. So the first point you made was if, let's say in 2025, I've got an illness and I'm not working as hard, and I'm not working as much, so I am making less OHIP money. I am still mandated to contribute my portion.
That's right, because it's fixed, right? The plan terms say that you were going to contribute 18% of your salary. So you're still taking a salary as a physician. You still have to put money in the plan.
So in your initial example, we talked about that 55-year-old gentleman or physician. They were supposed to contribute 32,000. You said maximum at 32,000.
Yeah, that's 18%. Yeah.
So in 2025, that said physician has a disability, not working, or has to take a sabbatical because to take care of family member, whatever it is, and their OHIP income has reduced, but they still have to put in that 32,000.
If they're taking a salary, which they would need to pay for gas money and food.
Right.
Right.
So there's a certain inflexibility there.
Yeah, and if you don't contribute on time, you can get penalties.
Oh.
So the administrators can bill you extra fees because you didn't remit the money on time.
Okay. In your second point, you mentioned I don't want to belong to this plan anymore. I don't like this plan for whatever reason. I need to get out of this plan, and it has to either go into a life income fund or a locked-in retirement account, which is a LIRA. And again, that offers a little more inflexibility here.
Yeah, it's not as flexible as going into an RRSP or a RIF, for example. The other option I didn't mention is you can also buy an annuity, but that's very inflexible because now all your money is tied up with an insurance company and you just get a monthly annuity payment.
So there are some inflexibility to this plan called the Specified Multi-Employer Pension Plan.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because the plan is registered with the province, and the Pension Benefits Act of Ontario imposes these extra rules, like the locking in, the mandatory funding, etc.
So now that we talked a little bit about the downsides, are there positives about the SMEP? Like why would I choose one if I wanted to? What are the pros of these plans?
Well, it's better than not having a pension at all. If there's a promised benefit, now I know that it might go down if there's a problem with the funding, but let's assume there's no problem with the funding, or let's assume a lot of your colleagues pass away and the money, instead of going to the children, stay in the pool. So now you have more money. So you don't have a reduction in your pension. Having that defined benefit pension to me, is a plus. That is something better than not having one. You also don't have to worry about the investments because it's centralized on usually one group of people that will manage the money. So you don't have to worry about how the stock markets are. Well, you should worry, but you don't have to, on a daily basis, tweak and do changes. And that investment function has been delegated to a professional group whose job it is to grow that pot of money for you. So it's for busy physicians who barely have time to, spend personal time. Not having to worry about that is a plus. And I understand that the fees could theoretically, if there's enough scale, if enough people join this plan and transfer their money in, the fees could be competitive at some point in the future. If enough people have their assets there, then the money managers typically will provide economies of scale and discount their own fees. And that benefits you because it means more money in the pool. So there's a bunch of advantages to being in a SMEP. We've already mentioned that there's cost certainty in the sense that you know that going in how much the company has to contribute. So that's for planning purposes, that could be seen as a positive. So it's not that these are bad. It's just that, in my humble opinion, they're suboptimal. You can do a lot better with other solutions.
So yeah, so I also agree with you. The pros of these plans is one, it's easy to sign up. Two, you're signing up with other people, so you're joining a group. There may be some economies of scale there and a reduction in cost. You're taking advantage of, I don't want to say the dying of other people, but the surplus of money, actuarial money come into the plan when other people pass away before you. But it seems like it's a set it and leave it type of plan where the busy physician does not have to handle the day-to-day money or invest or taking on that risk. It's handled by people who are professionals.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of advantages.
But you said the word earlier, which is it's better than nothing, and I agree. But you have other pension options in Canada now, and in your humble opinion, as you said, these SMEPs are suboptimal.
Yeah, and I'm happy to walk you through why they're suboptimal, but that is my conclusion after, being a pension lawyer for 20 years and looking at these structures. I've realized that there are better ways to save for retirement if you're a doctor than through a specified multi-employer pension plan.
Well, let's go through that because that was my next question. This is a podcast for physicians here and healthcare professionals in Canada. So let's just stick to pension plans for physicians. Why is it suboptimal for physicians in Canada? What are the different reasons for it?
Well, so if you used either an individual pension plan or a personal pension plan, you would be funding your promised benefit using the actual defined benefit rules. Remember my example, the 25% of salary versus 18%, the
Yes.
extra money. So not only are you claiming more tax deductions within the corporation that you control, that's your company, not only are you giving your company more tax deductions up front, you're also putting more money in a tax sheltered account where interest on interest is going to be building up faster. So you're accelerating getting to the end point, and you're creating more funding certainty because there's a reason why the actuaries ask for 25% at that age and not 18%. There's a legal, mathematical reason. They didn't just pull this number out of thin air. It's because when you're trying to fund a fixed pension, your dollars contributed at age 55 don't have as long to grow, right? So you need more money to make up for the fact that you won't have as much interest on those contributions for that year. But if you are arbitrarily capping off and saying, no, we don't care what the actual science says, it's 18% for simplicity of administration, for cost certainty. Well, you're not truly funding the promised benefit. So you're creating a risk. Now, you might say, yeah, but it's okay because if other people die, their money will be used to plug up the deficit, so I won't be impacted. But then that means the families are impacted. Or the other way is what I talked about before is, well, if I can't fund the promised benefit of $100,000 a year, I'll just arbitrarily reduce it to what I can fund, which could be 50,000, 60,000, 75,000, depending on how the math works out in terms of the pension fund. So to me, those adjustment mechanisms don't sit right with me. I don't like to be told I have a defined benefit pension and then it's cut later on. To me, that's not a true pension promise. And I don't like to rely on stealing money from my colleagues' families so that I can look after my own pension, just like I would like my money to go to my children, not to some strangers, even if they're esteemed medical colleagues. That's just a personal choice. Like some people may not care. If I had a choice between giving the money to my own children or to strangers, I'd rather give it to my own children. And you can't do that if you're in a communal pool where you die outside of what's called a guarantee period. So to me, those are real sort of fundamental problems. That's why I call it suboptimal. Fewer tax deductions, less tax-free growth, potential for benefit reduction, or potential for not transmitting wealth to my own kin on death. I find those issues too overwhelming to approve the specified plan and say that's the best model. In my mind, there are too many, and then that's without talking about the locking in problem, which we don't have with an individual pension plan or personal pension plan, because our plans are exempt from the Pension Benefits Act, so we don't have the locking in issue.
I'm glad you brought up again the flexibility issue because that's for me is a major roadblock. Physicians are professionals, we are autonomous, and in our day-to-day life, the way we practice medicine is through clinical judgment, which is autonomous. And we have flexibility to make those decisions because we are professionals. And all of a sudden, we're put into a plan where we no longer have that flexibility. It really goes against the grain of how physicians are being trained and taught.
Yeah, yeah, and that's without talking about the tax issue, right? So if you have an individual pension plan or a personal pension plan within the Federation of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan, and you say, you know what, I don't want my money managed by CPPP anymore. I found a great advisor at a bank or credit union or insurance company, and I want that person to now manage my pension assets. When your individual plan breaks free from the Federation, it's still a whole. There's no tax issue. You don't have to pay tax up front. And now the entire account moves to the new provider and they just continue with investing the assets. Why expose physicians to a tax problem when you don't need to? You know, you guys work so hard for your money. Why would we create extra tax issues when none are necessary? That's why I keep harping on it's suboptimal.
If you break away from the SMEPP, you now expose yourself to a tax issue, a tax burden, potentially.
Yeah.
But within the IPP, PPP world, that doesn't happen if you separate from the federation.
That's right.
And I say this a lot in my podcast, is one of the biggest wealth destroyer for high income professionals, i.e. physicians, doctors, dentists, engineers, lawyers, accountants, is taxes. So taxes is the biggest wealth destroyer. And when you destroy wealth, then you increase the possibility of burnout. And so for me, it's not just a tax issue, it's actually a lifestyle and medical issue as well when we link that together.
Well, we never talked about another optimization solution that comes with using the CPPP over a specified multi-employer plan. And it's the concept of accelerated contributions to take early retirement.
Which we call terminal funding.
Correct. That's right. Terminal funding. So if the medical corporation has had a really good year, billed OHIP, lots of, invoices, and is facing a large tax bill, we could have the physician turn on the pension ahead of schedule and say, I'm not going to wait till 65. I'm going to turn it on at 50, 58 randomly. So now the pension plan can receive monies from the medical corporation. That's the terminal funding payment. And it's a full tax deduction for the medical corporation. So even though it received all kinds of OHIP taxable income, by redirecting that money into the pension plan, it claims an offsetting tax deduction. So the company doesn't have a massive tax problem. And all that extra money is now injected into the pension plan, allowing it to be a lot more generous. So now at age 58, that physician can enjoy a much higher level of pension income than normal, ahead of schedule. And since it's collecting all of this extra pension income, it can say, you know what, I don't need to take on as many shifts. I can cut down on my shifts because I'm getting all this income from the pension plan. Well, none of this is possible where the contributions are fixed at 18%.
Right. So inside a specified multi-employer pension plan, there is no legal structure to allow that extra payment, to allow that terminal funding.
No.
In my mind, is a major drawback because this terminal funding is a very special feature that allows physicians to turn on the pension plan whenever they want, and thus, helping and combating clinical burnout whenever that time comes or if it comes. Now, to your point there, JP, I don't have to wait till I make a good amount of money from OHIP that year. I can use that money in my retained earnings from my corporation anytime I want if I do have significant retained earnings in my corporation. Is that correct?
Of course. And that's probably even more exciting than just deducting OHIP corporate income. Because if your corporation has a non-registered corporate investment account and let's say you bought shares worth 100, like your company, not you, your company, your medical company bought shares worth $100, and now with the passage of time, they're worth $300. And let's say in order to punt money into the pension plan, to contribute to the pension plan, you turn to that corporate account and you sell those shares. For sure, for a split second, the company is exposed to a capital gain. Not 100% of it, depending on the budget, it could be 50% to 66% will be what's taxable. But you don't care because when you contribute all that money into the plan, there's an offsetting tax deduction. So the company pays no tax on having liquidated shares in its investment account. So that's number one. But the non-taxable portion of that corporately held capital gain is called a CDA, or capital dividends account credit. So that allows you to pull tax-free dividends, which we call capital dividends, into your own hands. So imagine being able to suck money out of your company and pay no corporate tax and no personal tax on top of collecting a pension.
Now, this is not possible with the SMEPP. So the specified multi-employer pension plan, that is not possible. This is worth me repeating one more time. Now, this is not possible with the SMEPP. So the specified multi-employer pension plan, that is not possible. And also, more importantly, this is relevant in 2024 because in June 2025, the Liberal government increased the inclusion rate on the capital gains tax. So
So you mean
it becomes
2024? You mean 2024?
2024. What did I say?
This is 2025.
Oh, 2024. In June 25, 2024, they did that, but it hasn't gone into effect yet. Is that correct? But it will be coming, and it has even more relevance now with this new inclusion rate increase.
50% of the capital gain is taxable right now under current law, but we don't care because the cash from having sold those shares is going to give an offsetting deduction against any capital gain that's taxable. So we don't pay, the corporation doesn't pay any tax anyway.
Yeah, so that was I was going to continue with that point is by using the pension plan and the pension laws inside a IPP or even a PPP, regardless of the inclusion rate, it doesn't apply to the pensions, where this is simply not available for those who are in a SMEP. And so a huge, huge drawback in my mind.
Especially if burnout is a consideration and you want to start having an independent source of money to replace sort of what you were pulling out of your company through the pension plan so that you don't have to take on as many shifts so you can enjoy your life more and not burn out as quickly.
Exactly. So, JP, we've talked about the different types of plans in the Canadian environment right now. We've kind of defined what an MEPP is, what a SMEPP is. We've defined individual pension plans and PPPs. We've talked specifically about the SMEP, the pros and the cons of the SMEP, and the different drawbacks of the SMEP. In my mind, I agree with you. They are suboptimal for physicians. Anything else that you wanted to say about the SMEP that we haven't really discussed?
You know, as a lawyer that was retained by organizations to design these plan structures, my goal is usually to act in the best interest of my client, which is the organization that's setting up the structure. So I totally respect my colleagues who created these different SMEPs because their marching orders was minimize administration, simplify administration, make it as clean and simple to run. The flip side is that doesn't necessarily translate into the best solution for the end user, which is the plan members, the doctors. So there's a bit of a conflict there. So I think has to be said because, a lot of people will say, well, I'm sure that they vetted this. I'm sure that someone looked at this. But the point is, yeah, but it depends what lens you're using. If you're looking at it from the perspective of the physician, you don't want to be in a SMEP. You want to be, if you have the option of using an IPP or PPP under a federation, like the CPPP, or even just a standalone IPP, PPP with your broker, doesn't have to be with anyone we know, you will definitely have more advantages than if you were in a simplified multi-employer plan for all the reasons that we covered.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is these SMEPs are set up for ease of administration, clean, clear, for the best interest of the administrator, not so much the best interest of the end user. And I come back to this. So it meets the suitability standard, but it doesn't meet the best interest standard, at least for the end user. And so I question the fiduciary duty, if there is one here, of the people who set it up.
Well, you don't have a fiduciary duty when you construct the solution. You do have a fiduciary duty, even under a SMEP, once the plan is up and running and you're taking in money, in the way that you administer it, according to the terms of the plan, and in the way that you manage money, you do have a fiduciary responsibility. So I'm not taking that away from them. I'm just saying at the point of inception, in crafting the solution, there is no fiduciary responsibility to the doctor. There wasn't one. And obviously, it never materialized because they would not have offered a SMEPP had they really, really put the physician at the center.
Well, that's what I was driving at. I was driving at the lack of the fiduciary duty at the setup at the outset, because again, it's a suitable solution. It's not the best solution.
I mean, they didn't have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of the physicians when they built it. If it comes with all kinds of problems, like the ones we've identified, you got to live with these problems.
Agreed. So listen, we're going to end the podcast here because I think we put a lot of detail already. For people who do want to understand more about different types of pensions, the IPP, PPP, please go on to my website and to the podcast. I have lots of other podcasts describing other types of pensions as well. So JP, thank you very much for being with us today and describing the SMEPP, the SMEPP. Are there any things that you wanted to say to the audience that is burning off your chest right now that must be said?
Well, my parting word of wisdom is always the same, is please do your due diligence before you sign up, because if you have no clue what we've talked about and you sign up for one of these structures, there's no one else that's going to cry. It's going to be your mistake because you just didn't bother to check anything and ask anyone. So please take the time to consult experts and then make an informed decision.
Agree. So please, everyone, do your due diligence, make an informed decision. You know, as we say in medicine, informed consent. It means that we need to be educated before we consent to surgery or consent to an intervention. So physicians understand that very well, but when it comes to finances and signing up for different deals, sometimes we don't take the same type of homework to make that decision. So please, everybody, do your own due diligence and make an informed decision. Thank you very much, JP, and we will talk next time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode and it was relevant to you, please share it with your friends and your colleagues. I also want to announce that we have our Code Green Financial Fluency Conference happening on February 15, 2025. So 3 months away. So it's a time to pencil it in your calendar to make sure that you are there. You can go on to www.codegreenfinancial.com. So please go on there, visit the website, look at the speakers and the topic, and register. And we will be looking forward to seeing you there.
How is My Financial Health Doc podcast is hosted by Dr. Tran. Dr. Tran is a physician with a special interest in personal financial security and wealth education. Dr. Tran does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through this financial podcast. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. Please confer with your advisor, lawyer, or accountant for specific advice.